Thank you. So, of low-cost sensor measurement usage, and actually somehow after this one first slide, we can answer yes, potential is, and afterward we can finish my presentation. But we need maybe some improvements, and also after previous presentations, I can say yes, I can see a lot of practical aspects how to use low-cost sensors. And let me explain and show one more situation where we use them. And actually, sensor measurements were just some kind of side product of another project. And actually, we started with passive sampling, and the main goal was we wanted to detect the levels of benzopyrene in one small city, quite small city, and afterwards we decided that sensor measurements could explain the situation of pollution and so on. And just few words about background or elementary things what we all know. So sensor measurements and these technologies become more and more attractive and available as well. So actually there's just rich people can afford some kind of reference measurements. So sensor methods could give momental or could give some kind of explanation of pollution at the moment. We don't need wait for the case study description. This is very, very brief, and you can see on the map where we did measurements, and just to give idea about regional representation. And also there's another map where can you see displacement of stationary pollution sources, point sources. These sources are working according to special licenses allowing to pollute. And green ones are the, let's say, more environmentally friendly stations. And there's just few one in red color, mostly impacting environment or air quality. So the measurement done in port city Liepāja, and this is port city on Latvia's west coast, located on the Baltic Sea. So this is the third largest city in our country. About 70,000 inhabitants. And to give idea about meteorology, average annual temperature is about 7 degrees, and there are about third of year with precipitation days and average humidity about 82%, so on. And measurements was done in this year from February to June, and you can see what kind of sampling devices we used. So before I start with the results, there's some overview of historical measurements to give idea how polluted they are. And we looked on reference station measurements and also on national background station measurements. And there's also two lines describing also Latvia and situation is not so bad, and quite stable over the last years. What can I say? And how it looks, it is quite a simple picture. Commercially available on internet, and also we transfer data to open sense network available for all citizens, and so they could and so on. And on the right side you can see how measurement devices looks. Very simple one. And we hide the sensor in the plastic tube, and we put it on the reverse because of avoiding of precipitation, so it's quite simple. And also on the bottom you can see passive sampler. From PASM we boost it and also place these measurements about exposition so on. And also there you can see just a part of a reference device, and this is device belong to National Meteorological Service, and they are doing reference measurements. So we try to compare there how similar they are. And so these triangles explain or represent measurement sites. And on the upper side, there are just passive measurements done, and sensor measurements were done also in 3 sites, and also there was a reference measurements as well. And just inside where reference measurements were done, these are particularly specific measurement site to traffic. All other measurement sites are mainly explain individual heating, and the devices are placed in places where no any impact of industry actually. And so according to measurements you can see that February there was a very high concentrations, and yeah, we all know because it was that was because of Sahara dust situation, and we in Latvia we have a very dusty days in February. So, but that was not due to our activities, but to brief how variable they are. And as you can see, and also I listened to previous questions, and they results show a very huge variability, and somehow in some situations that could be a source of additional questions. Is it really so bad? And I think the future work is mainly connected to quality assurance algorithms, or we should answer, can we believe to these results? But let's continue. How Sahara Dust episode looks like. And there you can see these two most impressive days with very high pollution levels. And that's true that these days was very bad days in Latvia and suppose in other countries as well, where this episode happens. And but how can I believe to these numbers? And after what I did, this is a simple representation of sensor measurements and reference measurements. On the upper graph, you can see reference measurements, and also at the same place, we did sensor measurements. Badly, there was few episodes where reference device didn't work, and these due to some technical problems, and that leads to very bad comparison results. But when we exclude in our analysis these particular situations, actually you can see that the results are very, very comparable. What can I say is that actually sensor measurements a little bit overestimate, but if I think about precautionary principle and so on, it's quite good. Okay, and almost the last slide, we look on our data through different perspectives. Fractional interpretation, also variability with the context of meteorological data. Can we explain these data? And in this case, if we can explain, then I suppose we can believe our measurements, so on. So there's also some conclusions, and we can explain these conclusions. The highest ratio are in place with highest impact of traffic, and that's true. This site is very close located to one of the most dense traffic flow in the city, and also there's close to railway traffic as well. So it means our sensors explainable logics, and it's quite good. And conclusions are very general. We know that we can use these sensors, and in our case, of course, price is very important. In our case, price was very comparable to our measurements. So, of course, reference measurements are very expensive, but to passive measurements, very comparable. So, of course, I can't use for future analysis in a laboratory, but anyway, I can use to if I want to see what happened in city in different places. They are very, very mobile as well. But unfortunately, I see that calibration stations are quite essential. We need these reference measurements for calibration as well. And so I see that in future we should work on artificially intelligent algorithms to self-adjusting maps and so on, but that's in process. So, and with that way, I would like to say thank you to Liepāja City Council, and I think that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Šteinberga. And I have just a quick question. I don't see any other question. Just a quick question regarding the last slide. Do you think that this this insight regarding the relation between anthropogenic activities and the ratio between the PM particles dimensional ratio, do you think that this insight can be generalized to different situations, different locations? This insight is something that is stable. So when you have this kind of ratio, usually usually there is an anthropogenic source, or on the contrary, when you see the reverse, probably is something coming from Africa, from the sea.
Thank you. Actually, I should say that these ratios could be very, very different in different seasons. Because in, let's say, in summer season, there's much more less traffic. But there's another pollution sources. For example, in Latvia is we have a bad experience with burning of all the grass and so on, and there's very, very high ratios in April because of bad habits. And in some cases, I suppose there could be very high ratios also in case of fires. And we see it. I'm sorry to say, but this ratio is floating over the year and changing situation by situation. Sorry to say.
Okay, thank you. So, if there aren't any further questions, I will close the session. I will say thank to everybody that have contributed to this low-cost census-oriented session, and I give the floor back to Milena for the organizing for sharing the next session.